Meeting.
Good morning, everyone. This is Juana Amaria with Illinois Worknet, and we have Jeremy Mahan on the line as well, and we just want to do a quick sound check to make sure that everyone can hear us. And so how we're going to do that is there is a little guy at the bottom of you can go ahead and call us if you have any issues through the broadcast. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeremy and let him go through his information. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been quite difficult to kind of get us together, and everything is going on, and it's always chaotic on both our ends. So I really appreciate your time and your interest in joining us here on Worknet. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the introduction, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. This is my first webinar, so if I have any technical difficulties, bear with me as we go through this. But it's definitely not my first time speaking on labor market trends. It is a passion of mine. And I'm just going to click to the next slide just to give a quick bio on myself. My name is Jeremy Mahan. I'm a regional sales executive with Manpower in the Chicago Metro. I've been with Manpower since 2008. A couple key committees that I'm very active on are in the Chicagoland Chamber. I sit on the Mid-Market Forum Committee, and also I am on the advisory board for the Chicago Business Leadership Network through Disability Works. And I have a true passion for labor market research. I've actually been studying labor market research since I've been a child, not by my own doing. My father was actually a federal mediator. So since the early days, I've heard about labor strikes, labor negotiations, and workplace trends my entire life. And now I really study those, so I'm a better workforce consultant for my clients, and then also speaking to groups like yourselves. I get a chance to speak quarterly at the Chicagoland Chamber to their board, as well as monthly for associations, nonprofits, and my client base. So I'm going to give a little test right now on the webinar technology here. Can anyone that has heard me before, raise their hand? Can you click on that little raise the hand button right here to say that you have heard one of my my presentations before?
Looks like you've got some fans on this webinar, some
Great.
followers. And for those of you that are wondering how to raise your hand, there's a little guy underneath your Q&A chat pod that you can select, and it'll give you a couple options. And we can go ahead and even applaud, right? So there we go.
Well, great. Well, I see about at least, I think, maybe around 10 or so hands. And for all of these that haven't heard me before, welcome. I'm going to go through the next 60 minutes in two portions. First, we're going to start out with some employment trends that I track. I follow the Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs report quite frequently. And so we're going to take a look at those numbers, and we're going to take a look at what they mean a little bit more than just the unemployment rate that everyone is aware of. And then we're going to take a look at our local employment statistics. We're going to take a look at what the metrics look like in Chicago, but I've also incorporated some other stats for greater Illinois, because I know this audience is a little bit more not just Chicago-centric. And on that note, if there's any follow-up, if there's anything you're looking for in your market that's maybe not touched on in this presentation, please reach out to me afterwards. You'll have my contact information. I can even reach out to my local Manpower branch in your area and even get a representative to bring some material to your location. On the second portion of the presentation, we're going to talk about the human age, and it's really the new era of our workforce. And we're going to talk about talentism and how it's really the new it. How whereas companies before were looking for capital to be successful, it is now migrating into the talent within their organization. And the old days of doing things, and the old days I mean up until the Great Recession, up until 2008, later, or December 2007 when it officially started, has changed. And we now are in a new normal in the job market. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So first, a little bit about my company, Manpower. It is now Manpower Group. We rebranded a couple weeks ago, actually a month ago. And it's a big change for us because we have so many subsidiary companies and we have such a large breadth and scope throughout the world that we had a huge rebranding initiative to really differentiate ourselves and show the full spectrum of services that we provide in the marketplace. And I'm not going to go through all these, but a couple key ones I do want to establish some credibility with. First off, in our industry, we were number one by Fortune's list of most admired companies, which was a huge accolade in our industry. We are a truly global company. We have over 4,000 offices across the world. We're in 82 countries and territories. We have roughly 2,500 to 3,000 overseas, and we're a little over 1,000 to 1,500 here in the Americas. We have over 400,000 clients. Any given day, we have roughly 500,000 people out working. And as we can't get a job for everyone, we have training programs through our Manpower Training and Development Center where we're able to train actually 9 million people annually to help them retrain and reskill their skills to get out into the job market. And then through our subsidiary companies, Manpower Professional, which is now actually Experis, this icon is a little outdated. We are the largest professional IT professional outplacement firm, and then through Right Management, we're the largest outplacement firm. But then the staggering statistic on here that I always love to really talk to my clients about is the fact that on any given year we have, or I'm sorry, last year in 2010 and even in 2009 as well, we have 12 million people out working. And to get to that 12 million, we have 3 million people out working, and we have to interview about 12 million. And by going through those 12 million people and interviewing them, we're able to really calibrate and take a look at what our employers, our clients are looking for, and the skill sets of the job seekers out there, and really what that talent mismatch is. So with that, let's dive into some employment data. So I follow the Bureau of Labor Statistics quite vigorously, and on the first Friday of the month typically is when the employment situation comes out from the BLS. So again, if I could get a show of hands for those that follow this report, and are looking forward to it that Thursday night before to understand what those job numbers are going to look like. So if you can click on the little icon for the hand, just give a quick show of hands if you actively follow the report. Good. We got like 10, 12, 15, 11 people. Well, great. I am a data geek. As some of you may know, they heard me before. I am literally chomping the night before on what the numbers are going to look like. And I also send out on that Friday the labor market update for Manpower. And I know I sent it to Juana, so she may send it out to the rest of the team, where I sort of aggregate a lot of the data from BLS as well as Illinois Department of Employment Security, and also what Manpower is seeing in the field. But on the first Friday month, this employment situation is really key, and there's a lot more behind it than just the unemployment number. And so first off, I'd like to just educate everyone on what this report encompasses. And it's really comprised of two surveys, the household survey, which is the current population survey. And this is where we're able to gauge, how many people are out working, and it's by those that are 16 years of age and older, whether they're working full-time or part-time. And it's done by conducting a survey of around 60,000 households, and they have the sampling pool so that it reflects the greater population throughout the United States. And it is from here is where we gain our unemployment numbers and also those working across all demographics. The second portion of the report is the establishment survey, or what we call the jobs report. And this is where we're able to really gauge which industries are experiencing job gains, job losses, how their hours and earnings are trending, And this is done by conducting a survey across businesses, work sites, unemployment tax accounts, and it's really trying to figure out who reported any type of changes in their payrolls across these different industries. And between these two reports, we're able to get a really good gauge on what last month's employment situation looked like, and then following that trend historically. So if we take a look at the numbers for March, as you can see, and yes, they do. As you can see, the unemployment rate dropped, 10 basis points going from the month of February to March to 8.8%. And this was from a drop of around 131,000 employees, 131,000 individuals that are dropped from the unemployment numbers. And while these numbers are good, and there's been a lot of media frenzy about that, the unemployment rate being the lowest it's been throughout the recession, there's some other stats in here that are just as important that I like people to really be able to understand. And so first you can see that the numbers of those unemployed raise up almost to 300,000. And so first off, what is this unemployment rate? And if you can see my mouse right here, it's quite simply the unemployment rate is the number of those unemployed, this 13.5 million, divided by the size of the workforce, is 153.4 million individuals that are currently out looking for a job. But the most important staggering number on here that I want everyone to walk away with, and if you heard me before, I do really beat this down, is that the size of the workforce is actually a variable. It changes every single month. And contrary to popular belief, it has absolutely nothing to do, with those that are claiming unemployment benefits. It really depends on if you're out there currently looking for a job. So the more people that are looking for the job, the higher the workforce. And the higher the workforce is going to fluctuate your unemployment numbers. So we only seen 160,000 new workers enter the workforce for the month of March. We really want to see that number around 400,000 to 500,000. And it is my opinion, and that is why we're seeing these low unemployment rates. We have, roughly 2.7 million people that are marginally tied to the workforce, and out of those, about 1 million that are discouraged. And the discouraged worker is that individual that is, quite frankly, not looking for a job because they don't think there is one out there for them. They don't feel like they have the skills, or they feel any other factors that are taken into place of why they can't find a job. Now, as the confidence is building, which it is, and we'll talk about those numbers going forward, I expect, and I hope to see it even on May 6th when the new numbers come out, that this number does jump up, that it jumps up to roughly 400,000 to 500,000 to get those numbers up. Now, I have to say, I unfortunately have just experienced an internet break, so I may have lost the.
That's okay.
Can you go to the next? Can you go to the next slide for me?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. So this is the unemployment over the last 3 years.
I am pulling it up on my PC. So we are now. So right now, the crowd should be seeing the U.S. unemployment over the last 3 years, and you see the slide on the left, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So as we can see within this trend, we have a way to go. We have lost thousands of jobs throughout the recession. The Great Recession, as we know, began in December of 2007. Pre-recessionary unemployment rates were below 5%. We peaked over 10% at the end of 2009. And then as we went through 2010, we've seen a lot of fluctuations. We've seen it peak slightly around third quarter in 2010. And really since November, we've had this sharp decline. We actually have decreased a full percentage point since that time, dropping down from 9.8 to 8.8. So we have seen some significant job creation within the last 4 or 5 months, but also another driving factor in this trend is that, again, like I mentioned, the labor force has not really re-entered the workforce. So we can expect to see some some fluctuations as those individuals do re-enter. Now, if you can hit the next button for me, Juana.
Sure.
And what you should see is another slide pull up on the right-hand side.
And I just want to make sure that everyone is hearing Jeremy okay. I do see some microphones out there. Everybody a minute.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
And I apologize for the technology glitch. I'm not sure what happened with my internet connection. So as we can see here, what is the real unemployment rate? Because everyone talks about, well, yeah, that 8.8% sounds great, but it doesn't help me. I'm still unemployed. Maybe my neighbor's employed where they weren't before, but no one really believes that 8.8%. So to really gauge a better number, we have what's called the U6. And so what we're taking into account is not just those individuals that are out looking for a job but don't have one, but also those that are working part-time but they don't want to be working part-time. They're doing it just because they don't have a choice. That's what they need to put food on the table. And it's also taken into account those marginally attached that I mentioned, those roughly 2.7 million individuals. That means that they looked for a job within the last 12 months, but they haven't looked for one within the last month of the survey. And so they're still in the labor force, but not active within the last 4 weeks of the survey results. So this number has also trended down. It has trended down to about 15.7% from peaking above 16 within the end part of 2010. So all these are really positive trends for the unemployment rate. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
The second portion of the employment situation, which is key to follow, is the actual jobs report. And this is where we can see the change in the number of job losses and gains across the different industry sectors. And so if you look at the net, which is the total number of non-farm jobs, we had a gain of 216,000. And the non-farm jobs are basically broken out into private sector and into government. And within the private sector, we have the goods producing. And goods producing is your manufacturing, your mining, your construction. We had a gain of 31,000 jobs. And then in the service producing, was also strong, almost 200,000 jobs. And then the government has been continuing to be a struggling sector. And we do see trends that it's going to continue to track. We lost about 30,000 jobs last month, 14,000 this month, and as budgets and things come under scrutiny, this will be something to monitor. But in the net, we did gain over 200,000 jobs. And so is that a good number? Is that an okay number? How does that 216,000 jobs reflect to what we've gone through in the last couple of years, right? So if you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
And what you should see is a graph just on the left that says total non-farm, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what you can see from this graph is that we have had, for non-farm job growth, positive results since the end of Q3 of last year. Now, they have been fluctuating around 100,000 to 200,000. You can also see from this graph that in the earlier part of 2010, we had some job gains and some job losses. And as everyone can remember, last year was a census year. And so the government brought on roughly 800,000 census workers to conduct the surveys last year. So they had a huge ramp up and a ramp down. And so that's what reflects on this fluctuation. But we are seeing above 200,000 for the last couple of months, and that's good. If you compare that to where we were 2 years ago, and I don't have the pointer to reflect it, but we were, if you look in between that September 08 and that March of 09 bracket, we were losing over 700,000 jobs a month, month over month over month. And so those were some really, really deep cuts. And so as we are trending better, the question is how far can we sustain that growth to make up for all those job losses? And quite frankly, a lot of the job losses that occurred then may not come back. There are a lot of positions, specifically in construction, some manufacturing, that labor pool needs to be reskilled. But to get a better look on what the trends are looking like as far as employment gains, if you can click the next button, Juana, please. And you should see a private sector pull up on the right-hand side. You see another chart pull up
Yep.
to the right? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the private sector, we have actually had job creation for about 14 months since really the last month of 2009, going into 2010. And this is extremely positive. So what that means is within the private sector, which is where job creation needs to be driven, because they're profitable businesses, and as they become more profitable, they continue to hire. We haven't seen any negative job growth at all, not in 2010 and not in the last month or so in 2009. Now, these numbers aren't as great as we'd like them to be. You need to have job creation of about 250,000 just to be able to absorb the number of new entrants into the workforce. And a new entrant into the workforce could be someone coming out of college. It could be someone that maybe they are an empty nester and now they want to go back to work and have dual income, and so forth. So there's a lot of reasons. But just to keep up with those number of individuals reentering, we need to be at a 250,000. So last year when we were getting around the 100,000, we averaged about 100,000 new jobs last year. That was a really good baseline, but going into 2011, we're hoping to keep that above the 200,000 mark so we can really make some headway on the unemployment rate. If we can keep at this pace for the next 2-3 years, we can really make a dent into the recovery. Next slide, please.
Okay. Job gains.
So if we're taking a look at the different industry sectors that experienced the job losses or gains for the month of March, this is really important to follow. And it changes every month, obviously, but some industries tend to trend better than others. Professional services has been a really strong super sector. These are broken out into NAICS, by the way. NAICS stands for, it's NAICS, the North American Industry Classification System. And that is really how we segment out the different industries across the U.S. Within those professional services, that 78,000 jobs that were created, about 30,000 of them were in temporary services, the industry which Manpower participates in, as well as maybe some other organizations on the phone today. That is a huge leading indicator because and there's been roughly around, I believe, 500,000 jobs in temporary services just within the last year. But as the recovery is underway, employers, the first thing they do is they work everyone in overtime. Everyone's wearing like 2 or 3 hats. And you can only keep that going so long, and you can only drive that type of productivity until something breaks. Everyone has a burnout. At that point, and if you still have a hiring freeze, you're going to bring on a contractor. And then as times get better, you would convert that contractor into a full-time equivalent. And the numbers that we have seen, it's over 50% when a contractor would be flipped over to an FTE after being on assignment. So we have seen that trend, and that is really important because it means that companies need people. They can't currently focus with their existing workforce, but they don't have enough confidence. They don't have the budgetary means to bring someone on full time, so they turn to the contractor route. Next, you have education and health. The majority of these numbers are within the healthcare sector. The healthcare sector alone has brought on, I believe it's roughly 300,000. I think it's like 275,000 jobs within the last 12 months. They average about 24,000 jobs per month. And within the healthcare sector, it's really ambulatory services, everything from, nursing to, OTs, PTs. The industry is really booming, as a lot of us know. So that is a rock. On the education piece, it is tied into that super sector, and we've really seen really stagnant growth. It's pretty flat as of late. There were cuts more so last year and definitely in the beginning of the recession, but we have seen that flattened out. Now, whether that stays flat is another story as we move through 2011. Leisure and hospitality, 37,000 jobs. This has been mostly attributed within food and drink services, not so much in the hotels, but in food and drink. So as we have seen through the recession, more and more people have taken the at-home vacation. maybe an expensive dinner in the city of Chicago, whining and dining, but not really, taking the family out to, international sites or, out to Florida or other places. We've seen a lot more of the focus just on the inner vacation spots. And then we've just seen some really moderate growth across retail trade, manufacturing, and specifically durable goods. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we do differentiate durable goods and non-durable goods. A durable good is a product that's going to last more than 3 years, such as an appliance, a car, and so forth. A non-durable good, which you can see had zero growth, is something that is perishable, such as food. And then at the bottom, really, again, government, which we talked about briefly, 14,000 jobs, and then construction stagnant. Construction actually had a really boost last month, which was really refreshing. About 33,000 jobs were created last month, and so that helped with the rebound. But that is an industry that has been deeply cut, and a lot of those individuals will need to retrain and reskill themselves to get back into the workplace. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So you should be looking at a map.
Yep, I'm looking at the map.
All right. So when I'm shifting gears now to really, we talked about the national scope, but let's take a look at the different metropolitan areas across the U.S. A metropolitan area, just for terminology, is really defined as at least one city that has 50,000 people or more, and then the group of cities around it that really share the same social and economic factors as that main city. And I've been giving this presentation now for almost 3 years, and I got to say, it's been really refreshing to see more of these little spots turn yellow than they have been red, of which, as you can see, I can't point to, but but Chicago is even in the yellow bracket. So for the month of February, the non-seasonal U.S. unemployment rate was 9.5%. So when we dive into metropolitan statistics, we look at non-seasonal data, which is a little different than seasonal data because seasonal data takes out the data fluctuations. But as we can see, we are getting closer to more yellow on here. Now, out in the West, you see a lot of red. Out in Florida, you see a lot of red, and then you see a lot of red scattered throughout the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic and up in New York and Boston. So to dive into that, let's take a look at those large metropolitan areas. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
As you can see, in red, the U.S. unemployment rate for the month of February was at 9.5%. There's been the last couple months, Chicago has been below the U.S. unemployment rate, which is refreshing because for the last 2 years, it's always been behind it. But if we just sort of take a look at a glance, 10,000-foot view of these other areas, you got Washington, D.C. up at the top at 5.9%. They've been really buffered from public spending out in D.C., so they have not had such an impact throughout the recession. Minneapolis, Twin Cities have been strong. The corporations there have been hiring a lot of entrepreneurs out there. They've been really buffered from the recession. And then you have Boston, Dallas, Houston. Out in the Southwest, my counterparts out in Texas, they have been really buffered as well. They've had a lot of job creation within the mining, the oil and petroleum industry, so they've been doing pretty well as well. If you take a look at the other end of the spectrum, if you look at metros such as Detroit, Detroit has been leading the pack throughout the recession with the devastation they've had in the auto industry. But they have also rebounded. They've actually had the best delta. What I mean by delta, year-over-year change, they had close to, I believe, a 4% change from the same time last year. So they were looking at unemployment rates of like 15, 16% over the course of the last 2 years. And so it has been refreshing to see them have such dramatic pullback as they have been having some rebounding out in that area. Then you have areas like Los Angeles. They have been struggling. Out west has been some deep cuts, and it's been hard to get job creation out there. And then lastly, you have Miami at 10.9%. A lot of their industry has been tied to leisure and hospitality, and of course, the oil spill didn't help last year with their tourism. And so as they have been trying to really get back on track with their leisure and hospitality industry, they have taken a hit because a lot of occupations are tied to that. Next slide, please. Okay. So I know there's a lot more people in the audience than just in Chicagoland. But I do bring this slide up when I speak just because I like to educate people on first off, what is the Chicago Metropolitan Statistical Area, or the Chicago Metro? There are only 11 metros throughout the U.S. that are so large that they actually have divisions, Chicago being one of them. So our core division of the metro is those counties that are in orange, those 8. And actually it's even called the same name, the Chicago, Naperville, Joliet MSA. But we have our division with the western counties in Indiana, which is our Gary MSA, and then up north, our Lake County, Kenosha County division.
And
now,
just for our LWIAs, this would be the Northeast region LWIAs, so to keep it in perspective on our end.
So I know those on the phone follow these stats probably vigorously, even for your own division. I have been giving this presentation for a while. I am pleased to say those are all positive percents on the right that you can see. That 1.3% for Illinois, the 1% for Chicago MSA, and so forth. I have been reporting negative employment trends, obviously, going through this. And, we had seen negative percentages of high as 4% over the course of the last 2.5 years. So really, this year is the first time I've been able to see positive numbers. I mean, we can really say, hey, the worst is behind us. What we seen last year was worse than where we are now. We're continuing to see job growth. Next slide, please.
Year to year?
So these are some slides I pulled in actually last night because I wanted to be able to accommodate those on the phone other than the Chicago Metro. So as everyone may be aware, Illinois Department of Employment Security, and I'm sure there's people on the phone from that organization. I love following your data. It helps me get a real good gauge of what's happening here locally. We had some really good results announced yesterday. And so if we take a look at just all the metros across the state of Illinois, you can see that, again, we have had a year-over-year positive change. We actually have seen the metros drop in their unemployment for actually the 7th consecutive time, which is extremely positive. Those that had the best, I believe it was Rockford. Rockford dropped down. I can't point to it, but as you can see that 11.
I'm doing all the pointing for you. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
They actually I'm ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'm on the next slide. Let me go back. All right. So where you're at, you're looking at the unemployment numbers. Okay.
Right.
So as you can see, it wasn't Rockford. It was actually Peoria. Peoria had the largest increase. They had about 3.8%, an increase of 6,600 jobs. But within the metro division, those 8 counties, we did have a gain of 44,000 jobs, which is extremely positive. I mean, so all the metros, as a matter of fact, all the counties in the state of Illinois have been having a drop in their unemployment rate and experiencing job creation. I believe there was only 2 counties that did not have job growth. So if we move to the next slide, which is the unemployment numbers, and this is where I got ahead of myself before, so my slides are transposed on my end here. This is what I've been happy to report because I follow the unemployment numbers pretty diligently. So for 7 consecutive months, we've had the unemployment rates drop across every single metro across the state of Illinois. We are now at 8.7% for the city of Chicago, the metro of Chicago rather, down from 11.1 in March at the same time last year. Now it's really hard to do this month to month because it's non-seasonally adjusted data, so you really have to compare yourself to where you were a month ago, not really where Chicago was last month with this data. But again, this is just another really positive sign that, hey, we are making strides. There is job creation. It's sustainable. We just didn't have a short influx, in the end of 2010 or early first quarter. It is a trend. There is job creation. It's just a matter of how quickly it's going to be. How many new jobs are we going to see throughout our metros and throughout the state of Illinois, and hopefully we can exceed that 50, 60,000 on an annual basis so we can get to the numbers that we're looking for. So that really takes part of the first of the 3 sections of my presentation, and I'm going to try and be conscientious of time because I see that we're at 10:38. I know we're here till 11, but if you can go to the next slide, we're going to now dive into our own proprietary research that Manpower conducts, which is called our Manpower Employment Outlook Survey. And I don't have a chance to see how many hands people have seen this, but our Manpower Employment Outlook Survey is a report that a lot of people follow because it's able to give a forecast. It's able to give a gauge of what things are going to look like in the upcoming quarter, globally, nationally, regionally, and then also locally within your own market. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So the Manpower Employment Outlook Survey, which is basically 47 years of asking the same question quarter over quarter to really track a trend. And what that question is, and it's at the bottom of the screen, and this is what we conducted in the beginning months of Q1. How do you anticipate your total employment at your location to change in the 3 months to the end of June of 2011 as compared to the current quarter? So basically, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your staffing levels at your organization? We asked this of thousands of HR professionals across the U.S. and across the globe. And typically, these managers have the decision-making power of 10, 15, 20-plus employees. So we're able to really get a good gauge on what the outlook is going to look like. And so, our terminology is this net employment outlook. It's our key statistic. And this is where we're able to see, what will this look like in the next quarter, aggregated across all the industries as well as broken down by the different industry sectors that we track. So you can go to the next slide, please. So if we take a look at the global outlook, and if you could want to switch to the PDF that I have, just so everyone could see the report. And after this call, I want to make sure everyone's on my distribution list so they can get this report. It comes out quarterly, and it's got a lot of this information we're going to dive into these next 10 slides. And I can show everyone how they can really peel apart these numbers and see what they mean. And so for the global outlook, if you go to the next slide, it's on page 7 of the PDF that I also have shared.
We're on page 7.
All right. And I don't know if you can do a hybrid screen where you can see the global results as well as the PDF. But it is on page 7, so everyone can refer to it afterwards. I'm not going to go through all the countries, but I just want to point out those that are at the top and those that are the weakest. Out of the 39 countries and territories that we surveyed, most of them required a positive trend. They are 33 out of 39 are actually forecasting the increase. Those that are doing best, India, Taiwan, Brazil, China, Turkey, and Singapore. A lot of them with ties to manufacturing. I would like to point out Brazil. Our manpower operations in Brazil are extremely busy. It is a up-and-coming emerging market, and it is a market that the world will be looking at. If we take a look at those that have the weakest, you have Greece, Spain, Ireland, and Italy. A lot of those countries also have a lot of employees tied to the public sector. And so as they're going through budgetary constraints, you've seen a lot of this in the media, they are struggling, and they're trying to get a handle on what they're going to do with their workforce. But that's about all I'm going to dive into globally. You see the website there. It's press.manpower.com. You can actually go to that website and pull down the specific data for any of these countries that I mentioned. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
National Outlook.
The national outlook is where we can really gauge what's happening across all 50 states. And if you have the PDF up in front of you, you can see that there's actually a graph at the bottom of page 1 where you can actually see the trend. And when you map out this trend compared to the unemployment rate, and a lot of times it even has a really good trend with GDP for the U.S., it's pretty accurate. So what this is, it's able for us to really gauge on what is the upcoming quarter going to look like and what should we be on the lookout. And that's whether you're an employer, want to know what your industry is going to look like, your competitors, or specifically a job seeker, so you know which industries are going to have the brightest and best opportunities for you to have employment. So if we take a look at the national results, if you can go to the next slide.
We're here.
And out of all of the thousands of HR professionals and hiring managers that we spoke with, 16% of them forecast an increase in their staffing levels for this quarter, while only 6% forecasted a decrease. Roughly 3/4 of them anticipate no change, so the bleeding has stopped, the layoffs have stopped. Right now, what they're really trying to do is they know they need to grow, they just don't know how they're going to do it within their budgetary constraints. When you take out the seasonal adjustments, we have a positive outlook of 8%. And this is very consistent with where we were in the first quarter. And compared to where we were last year, we're up 2%. And so if you look at the graph within my PDF, you can see that flat line going from Q1 to Q2. So in general, what does this mean? It means that the job creation that we've seen through Q1 has been sustained through Q2. And these are the same numbers that we've been seeing in the BLS that I referred to earlier in the presentation. That job growth of around 200,000 that we've been seeing sustained within the last couple months. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
And I'm also on page 2 of the PDF, too, if anyone's following that. But we also break down the major industry sectors. We break them down into 13 of them. And we basically break down the NAICS, the super sectors, but we also take manufacturing, we break it down into durable goods and non-durable goods. So if you go to the next slide, which has the breakout for each of these industry sectors, you can see that we actually had positive job outlooks for all of the industry sectors that we surveyed. One I would question would be government. The government was at plus 1%. I think because of a lot of the deep cuts that they had during the survey, perhaps they anticipated that it would be sustained. As we had seen from the BLS, that has not been sustained. But if we look at the left-hand top side, if we look at those that are experiencing double-digit growth, you have leisure and hospitality at 21%. That has had a major comeback even since last year. As I said, as people are getting more jobs and as confidence is building, they are taking more miscellaneous spend and treating themselves to more dinners, more restaurants, some hotels, because let's face it, over the last couple of years it's been rough. So as people are rebounding, they're looking to take some R&R with their families and for themselves to really recoup. Mining has been big. Mining is much more so focused, I'd say, in the Southwest, but mining has also been a sector in the state of Illinois as well. Even from the Illinois Department of Employment Security's data, they show mining as being a sector that has grown. Durable goods manufacturing, wholesale, retail trade, all at double-digit growth, as well as non-durable goods manufacturing. The others on the right-hand side are really showing some sustained job creation, so we expect some slight increases for this quarter, but not as prudent as those on the left. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
If we take a look at the regional outlook, and there's 4 regions that Manpower tracks within our Manpower Employment Outlook survey results, and this is followed on pages 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the PDF. That you have. And also, by the way, afterwards, if anyone wants a hard copy of this, I will get it out to you. I'll have it mailed to you, so just please follow up with myself or Zerwana, and we'll have that taken care of. So if we take a look at the first region, which is the Midwest, and this is on page 3, we actually had an outlook of 8% for the second quarter. So it is slightly down from last quarter. We were sitting at around 11% for last quarter, but up from where we were last year. Last year we were sitting at 4%, so we did see a substantial growth. 3 or 4 out of employers anticipate no change, so 3/4 of them are expecting the bleeding to stop. I always like to point out the top 3 industries in each sector, so if you have that PDF in front of me, I would point to it, but you can reference it afterwards. But the leisure and hospitality is huge in the Midwest. We have an outlook of 26% just for the industry sector alone. Manufacturing durable goods is sitting at 17% for the Midwest, and then transportation and utilities is sitting at 15%. So those are the major industry sectors to be on the lookout for this quarter. Next slide, please. For the Northeast also had an outlook of 8% for the second quarter. Really stable from last quarter. We were sitting at around 9, and also really stable from last year. We were sitting at 7. The Northeast, as I've been tracking this over the last 2 years, has really been buffered. They haven't, as a whole. I mean, there are certain metros such as New York and Boston that have had it worse, but they've also been able to really stay on check with job creation more so than the other regions. So we're not going to see as much year-over-year change for them because they were actually the best region the same time last year. Now, similarly to the Midwest, some of the major industry sectors that are promising for the Northeast, again, leisure and hospitality, they're at 21%. Manufacturing, durable goods, again, at 15%. And then professional and business services, a sector that we're going to see really booming across the whole U.S., frankly. I'll talk about it later, at 15%. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Now we're in the South, and within the South, and I like to call it sometimes the Southwest. They have been able to do really well towards the end of last year. They're sitting at 8% for this quarter. They're pretty flat from last quarter. They were sitting at 9%, and they're up from last year at 6%. Like I mentioned earlier in the slides, you have cities in Texas such as Dallas and Houston. I have counterparts out there. They have had a lot of job creation with a lot of the corporations that have relocated out there. A lot of businesses are flourishing out in those areas, in particular industries such as oil and petroleum, and they have been able to really get a good grip on job creation and really keeping a track on their unemployment numbers, as we've seen in the stack ranking earlier. But that brings us to our last, if you go to the next slide, our last region, which has been the West. And the West has struggled. If you remember from the slide of the map, most of the red was in most cities and metros across the state of California. But they're currently sitting at 8%. They are up from last quarter. They were sitting at 7% last quarter, and then the same time last year they were sitting at 6%. They haven't really had any double-digit growth, of course, over the last two years that I've been tracking this. It was actually pretty brutal. They were sitting a lot of times at negative job growth. But for this time, which is really good to hear, they are the most promising. Since 2008. So they have had a rough road, but the optimism with the employers out there has been the best since we've seen. So we do have high hopes. I also have counterparts specifically in LA, and I do hear on a monthly basis how things are improving out there. So the West is getting better, but it has been the region that's been hit the hardest over the course of the last 2 years from our results.
And Jeremy, I just wanted to let you know that we're 10 to 11, so
okay.
I want to make sure we have enough time for questions as well.
So what we can do is, let me just get through our local results, and then maybe we could table the human age maybe to another webinar. So, okay. But let me wrap this. So if you can go to the local outlook and then go to the next results. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people have a lot of questions on, okay, what is happening in our Chicago metro? And I have data for the state of Illinois as well, which I could share afterwards. But in our metro within Chicago, out of all the employers that we surveyed, 14% of them anticipated an increase, while only 6% forecasted a decrease. Over 3/4 forecasted no change. So this resulted in our 8%. And this is up from last quarter. We were sitting at only 4% last quarter, but it is down from last year. Last year we had a really, really strong projection for Q2 for 15%. I remember giving this presentation last year, and there was a lot of optimism as we rolled off to Q1 into Q2, and we did. We had an explosive Q2 last year. And then as we got into Q3, it sort of dwindled down. So right now we're seeing more sustainability. We're not seeing that huge spike like we've seen last year, but we are seeing the sustainability that we've seen within the last quarter, and even ending in 2010 for the fourth quarter. If we want to look at the industry sectors that are looking most promising, if you go to the next slide. Mm-hmm. Those that appear the best, and this is based off the survey results that we conducted around January, end of January, early February is when we wrap up these results. But with the exception really of two, there's good news. Construction, durable goods, transportation utilities, wholesale retail trade, information, financial activities, education and health, leisure and hospitality, other services, all of them reflecting a positive job growth for this quarter. Construction, we did see some. I'm a little speculative on how much job creation will be in there, but I can tell you for sure, durable goods, transportation, wholesale retail trade, financial activities, and health, as leisure and hospitality, Manpower sees these orders every single day. We have on a weekly basis on the order of over 100, sometimes 200 open orders that we're working on across these sectors. Those that plan to reduce staffing levels, professional and business services, again, I'm a little skeptical on that because I have seen job creation in professional business services. My rationale behind the survey results on this is the confidence level wasn't there coming out of Q1, that they felt that possibly they're going to have to maintain the same or cut. But we have seen growth in professional business services. When the new results come out in June, I expect to see a spike. Because in professional business services, and specifically in the city of Chicago, we're forecasting about 250,000 jobs in this industry alone. And for those, what is professional business services? It's all those organizations that take off the non-core competencies of companies. So whether you're hiring and you have employment services, you go to a company like Manpower, or maybe you want to outsource your back office, your mailroom support, you go to companies that specifically come in and take care of all your mailroom operations. No more accounting departments. You outsource it to an accounting firm. Same thing with the law and legal services. And so that will continue to be a strong service industry for the city of Chicago as well as across the state of Illinois. And then those anticipating no change, non-durable goods. So next slide, and the last one for the conclusion on this portion, is just a recap on the data dump that I just gave everyone and some key takeaways to walk away before we would talk about the next portion. But we have seen a full...
There's going to be a pop quiz at the end of it all, so you can't log off until you answer all our questions.
No problem. I am all yours as long as people will put up listening to me. We've seen almost a full percentage job rate since the end of last year. That's huge. Now, if you ask me, I anticipate to go above 9%. I think it'll happen in 2 weeks on May 6th because I want more people to look for a job. You know, we mentioned earlier it was only 160,000 people that re-entered the workforce for last month. I hope we have 500,000. You know, we've seen a couple months last year where we did. So don't get too focused on the unemployment rate, but it is at this rate, and that is a really strong sign. The private sector averaged 100,000 new jobs last year, and what we're seeing now is we're trending upwards to 200,000. Remember, we need 250,000 just to keep up with the absorption rates of those coming in the workforce, but we're on the right trend. Job gains are broad-based, and we've seen them across all really but 2 sectors. If we looked at those numbers from what the March numbers look like. And then if we look at the Illinois Department of Employment Security's the latest results, you know, all metros had a drop in unemployment rate for the last 7 months and all the counties for the last 4. I don't believe that's ever even happened since they started publishing the data in the 70s. If we recap just on the Manpower Employment Outlook survey results, I had some pretty dire months in 2008 and 2009 when I was given these results because it was negative. You know, it was really hard to put a spin in 2008 and 2009 on what was happening because it was bad. We've had 6 straight quarters of employment growth. We have another one now for these results, and we're already seeing it happen in the marketplace. And then also just those industries, almost all of them are showing growth or sustainability. And then locally in the market, we only seen 2 that weren't, professional business services and government, and quite frankly, it's really just government. So anyway, for more information, there is the website. I am going to stop here. I'll be happy to do this again in a month or so to talk about the human age portion because that is a great portion. Sorry I was long-winded, but I do get passionate on the data research. So with that, I'll stop and open it up for Q&A and stay as long as you'd like me.
Absolutely, and I'm just moving forward so that they have your contact information. And we actually do have a quick question here, and Kristen asks, please define the size of the workforce. Again, how are those people counted? And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and unmute people on the conference call and put them in queue to ask questions. And so the way you do that is you star pound. And I understand if people have to get going, but please feel free to stay on so that we can answer your questions.
Sure. So like I
The floor
mentioned,
mode is on. To request the floor, enter star, then pound.
are you able to go back to a slide for me to answer this question too?
Sure.
If you can go back to the beginning where I say, what is the monthly report, slide 6. So a lot of people think that the size of the, those are unemployed or the size of the labor force has to do with unemployment benefits, and that's not the case at all. When they conduct the survey results on a monthly basis, they ask that sampling pool, have you looked for a job within the last 4 weeks? First off, are you working? A, whether it's part-time or full-time. If you're working, you're employed. If you're not working, have you looked for a job within the last 4 months? If you haven't, you're not part of the labor force. Now they ask, have you looked for a job within the last year? If you answer yes, but you're not looking for one now, then you're marginally tied to the workforce. And then if you're marginally tied, they further ask you, why aren't you looking for that job? And there's a bunch of different reasons. And if they say, I'm not looking for a job because there aren't any. There's no jobs out there for me. I don't have the skills. I can't find one. I give up. Well, then they become a discouraged worker. So that's how those numbers are tabulated.
And we have another question on the chat, and George asks, with 3 out of every 4 employers consistently indicating that they have no plans to change their staffing levels, I'm having trouble being as optimistic as you are. What would you say to that?
Well, actually, all right, so that is actually a good sign, because what it means is that they're not going to have any more layoffs. Those numbers were not the case over the last 2 years. So, and remember this, I'm talking about employers that can hire 10, 15, 20, large amounts. Your small businesses that only hire 1 or 2 people, they're not really factored into this much because they don't have as much weight as in getting the broader picture. So outside these survey results, let me tell you what I'm seeing in the field. I'm seeing a ton of small businesses come to me. I'm seeing a lot of mid-market companies come to us because they now can't handle their current service. They can't handle their current customers. They're missing their service or deliveries. But you know what? They don't know where their business is going to be next month or in the next quarter. They think it's going to be good, but if they hire someone on and that individual, if they hire someone on and they don't have that sustained business, then they're going to have to let that person go. There's a huge cost to that, especially if they're on board over 30 days. They're now going to be on the hook for unemployment insurance. And, there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot, as we all know, in bringing someone on board. So by them saying they don't want to let anyone else go, that doesn't necessarily mean they won't bring on someone maybe contractually, or maybe these small businesses want to bring on a couple people to help with their businesses. So that is a good sign. You should be optimistic about that. If we had 10, 15% of the employers out there saying we're going to decrease our staffing levels like we were seeing in 08 and 09, and more people saying, I don't know if I'm going to stay the same. I just don't know. It's when that I don't know goes up to 5, 6, 7%, that's when we get a little bit worried, because they're not at least committing that the bleeding has stopped, that they're not going to lay off more people.
And then Sally wants you to mail her a copy, the hard copy, and so I'm going to go ahead and ask her to just email me with your address.
Sure. And then I know I send my labor market updates to you on that first Friday, and I know you get them out to the team, but if anyone else would like to be on, just have them email me. So
absolutely. And they are, the report, that PDF that we were going back and forth on, is actually the file name MEOSQ2. So you just go ahead and you select it and then save it to your desktop, to your computer. I'm going to go ahead and just switch over really quickly. Anybody on the phone line that has a question, just star pound, and it'll make you get into the queue. And actually, I'll go ahead and get that started for you. So if you do have a question you want to ask on the phone, you're more than welcome to. And then, Jeremy, George his answer to your statement was that he does understand that, and he'd just like to see the change to maybe 1 out of 2. And so I hear that.
We all
have
do.
our wishful, hopeful
We all
thinking.
do.
Yeah.
I agree, George.
Matthew asks, and hi Matthew, thanks so much for joining us. Does the local employment forecast use an industry sample representative of the local industrial base?
Yes. Yes. When our sampling pool reflects all the industries. And actually, our survey results are not even done internally. We have them outsourced to a professional research company. So when we tabulate the data, they come in and make sure the sampling pool is accurate, and they also take care of our seasonal adjustments. So they take out any of the fluctuations that are caused by seasonality, such as holiday hiring and whatnot.
Got it. And then Eva asks, do you also survey wage rates?
We do not. We don't survey wage rates because we're typically talking. Well, let me tell you why. You could take a survey and make it 20 questions, and the more lengthy and the more involved a survey, the more convoluted it is to get really true answers. At Manpower, we've kept it simple. So we've asked one simple question, and we've asked it consistently over the last 47 years. And that way we're able to really drive some consistency and some trends from it. So we haven't altered from that. Now, I follow other reports. So, this report is just one piece of what I'm a labor market, I consider myself a labor market expert. Maybe some people would say I'm not, but I consider myself one because I spend a lot of time studying this stuff. So I follow the ADP, their payroll report. I follow ISM, the Institute of Supply Management. I definitely follow Illinois Department of Employment Securities and BLS. So when you take all those into account, I look at wage and earnings on those reports, but we don't track them.
And also, for those of you that are the business service team members, a lot of what Jeremy does follow, he emails to me, and then I share with my teams. And so a lot of that is reflected in the reports that he sends out. So, and we really appreciate it. It's nice to get that perspective from your end, because you do, as Jeremy and I were talking, he talks to 10 clients a day. And has that perspective refreshed every week, whereas maybe we don't necessarily have that that type of interaction or interface on our end. So we really appreciate it.
Let me give a quick commentary too, just because I probably want to see what I see in the field. So in the Chicago market, and in that monthly report I put on what jobs we're seeing, we have seen an influx in some manufacturing jobs, full scale, everything from frontline, entry level, pickers and packers, CNC operators and such. On the professional and business services side, we have seen a lot of sales positions and across the Chicagoland area, because businesses are ramping up. They know, okay, it's time. It's time to ramp up. It's time to get more business. If not, their competitors are going to do it. And also, they need to retain their customer base because now the competition is ramping up to try and take it. So we're seeing an extremely competitive market right now. The jobs that we have, we're seeing it still be very competitive. And it's a little bit in the human age, but employers want it all. They have the job requisition, they have the requirements, but they also have the wish list. So the need for bringing on new people is absolutely there, but it is competitive with the job seekers to make sure that they have the skills and have the training to fit in, so and become part of that organization. But CSR is a lot of administrative office clerical support now. We've seen a lot of the administrative professionals been cut over the last 2 years. And what that's done is it's brought down the productivity, not just on C-levels, but also on mid and upper management. And so now we're seeing a lot more confidence to bring back those administrative professionals. So, hey, now those executives can be much more productive if they can gain 10 more hours or 5 more hours out of their work week to focus on strategy. And a lot of the other tasks that could be, such as being reactive to emails being taken by an administrative assistant, they're going to be more productive. So we are seeing this trend, and we are seeing job creation in the field at Manpower.
And very quickly, someone asked if you can give a quick overview of that human age part 3 of the presentation, and what I included in the chat was that if they watch the video that we encourage them to watch before the webinar, that'll give them a good indicator of the topics covered. So I just wanted you to confirm that so that they know.
Yeah, let me just try and give the skinny and the sum of it. So first off, the human age is an era that Manpower has coined, that we have identified 2 months ago at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. We were the only employment services company there. And so if you go to my website and look at the video, you can also look at the bottom of tens of, I don't know how many, I think it's about 50, CEOs and senior management from major corporations across the globe commenting on this. And what it is there's a skills gap going on. There are a significant number of working age people that will no longer be here in the next 20 years. There's one staggering number I would love everyone to remember. Is starting right now, every single day for the next 19 years, 10,000 baby boomers will reach the age of 65 and will eventually leave the job market. They're going to take with them not just their business contacts, but their knowledge of the organization, and a lot of things that may or may not be transferred down to the other generations that take their place. And so what the human age is really identifying, and we've gone through a bunch of ages before. We've gone through the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the agricultural age. We've gone through the industrial age, 100 years ago. As of late, since post-World War II and the race for technology, specifically the fears of the Cold War, we had the information age. We've had all these new technologies. Well, now we're getting to a point where now it really comes down to the human potential. So, think about virtual working. Some people can work from home. Some people do a hybrid situation where they can work from home or work in the office. Well, imagine what that's going to look like in the next 10 to 20 years. You could literally turn your home office into a virtual world where you have multiple screens. You could even have probably by then a whole wall that can be a visual display of you looking at another virtual employee. So you can actually, we're moving to a point where any company across the globe can get the talent that they need, regardless of where that person sits. So it's truly a borderless workforce to bring the talent they need for their organization. And so employers are smart. They're looking to get the best out of an employee. They all want to do more with less. Everyone has learned over the last couple of years that, hey, it's been painful, but we've been able to hit our productivity numbers. Instead of having 20 people, we have done it with 12. Now, we can't keep doing that, but they have learned to get more from less, and they're using technology, and what they're doing is they're pushing the most out of the productivity out of their employee. So the human age, in sum, really represents what can companies do to unlock the most out of the potential out of that employee, out of that human. What can we do to make them the most creative, innovative? What can we make them to make them the best asset for the company? And technology now has brought us to the point where now it's all us. It's all on you. How many skills can you bring to the table to be that asset for the company? And if you can't do it, someone else will. And so companies now, whereas then they needed to look for capital and funding to really be successful, they're going to be looking for talent. There are companies outside the U.S. that are buying companies here and moving in, not just to get our IP, but to really get access to our talent, so then they can go ahead and really ramp up their own organization. There is, I had an example, but there was, GE. GE is in the market, and they're in a lot of products, but they make water heaters. And the new improved water heaters are not the big 50 or 80-pound drums you have in your basement. They're really small, efficient, green devices. And that technology is really innovative and really strong in North Korea. They went out and hired and bought a company and actually brought those individuals back to the U.S. to train their workforce. And so that's what I mean by the human age, tapping into the most out of the human potential. That's what's going to make organizations successful. I hope I justified that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and encourage them to just go towards you do have that part of the presentation in the PowerPoint that we emailed as well as in the file share. And if I just wanted to ask that nobody else had questions, and if they don't, we'd like to really Thank you for participating. I know it's Good Friday, so there were some comments about, oh no, well, we're all working. So, so we're glad that you can make it on. And please, just really quickly before everybody signs off, with a show of hands on your interest in the Human Age webinar, and we'll get that set up for you. And everybody's hands are jumping up. So that's good
Great.
news, Jeremy. So. We appreciate your participation, and we look forward to seeing you on again. And I'll go ahead and send a follow-up email. Just to let you all know who do have workforce professional accounts, all of this is going to be available under labor market information on the business services pathway. And so this is part of our professional development webinar series for all of those assisting businesses. So once again, thank you so much.
Can I add something more real quick?
Sure.
If anyone in attendance is in human resources and you have a PHR or SPHR, please let me know, because this counts towards an hour towards your recertification as well. So if you have that, please share with me and I'll get you a certificate so you can count that towards your 60 hours of recert for your annual certification. So. Right,
and so go ahead and email Jeremy about that so you can get your credits. And Jeremy, thank you so much for everything. This is phenomenal. I've already got a bunch of feedback from everybody on how much they've enjoyed your webinar, so we really appreciate your time.
Well, great. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate being here. And like I said, we can follow this up in the next month or so if we want to talk about one of the thought leadership topics as well, such as the human age. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Good day.